Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Roll call, beginning with Commissioner Mike Smith.
Here.
I'm here. Commissioner Smith. Doug.
Here.
Commissioner Stevens.
Here.
Commissioner Fullerson.
Here.
We're all here, present and accounted for. We'll start with our public comment. We have two individuals for public comment. I'll start with Mr. McMillan.
Good morning, Commissioners. Eric McMillan from Easton Township. I'd like to comment on two agenda items in the time for one. First, I'd like to thank and commend the board for approving and accepting outside grants for the Veterans Treatment Court. Watched it, thought everybody in the room really was doing the right thing. County Attorney Todd Thompson and Assistant Attorney, County Attorney Chris Lyons did the right thing by asking for a special session. Mr. Louthry, I thought, did very well framing the issues, and the board, I think, did a good job in approving the request, but also in recognizing that the benefits, once the outside grants go away, there's no guarantee that they'll be in future budgets. I thought the whole event was an example of good governance. And good governance has to be transparent. This brings me to my second agenda item. Bottom line up front, please keep all public comment on these meetings on YouTube. Streaming and recording all public comments on YouTube allows everyone in Leavenworth County, whether they're able to attend this session in person or not, to be aware of what's going on, including being aware of what their neighbors are concerned about and presenting to the Board of County Commissioners. At the Public County work session a couple weeks ago, there were concerns about vulgar language, the county perhaps being sued over defamatory language during public comment, that YouTube would cancel us over violations of their community standards, and there's a little bit of a hint of concern about public comments can be uncomfortable. Maybe these concerns shouldn't really be that concerning. Some folks don't have the good manners not to swear. I watch a good bit of YouTube. There's vulgarity, there's profanity on YouTube, and YouTube doesn't often seem to be that concerned. They have a 3 strikes policy. We would get ample warning, I think, on that, and I think the chair could really halt any sort of vulgarity or profanity, or at least a second use through warnings. Also, I'm not convinced the county's at great risk for being sued for someone saying something defamatory, slanderous, perhaps during public comment. Has this happened in other counties? If someone makes a defamatory comment during public statement, again, I think the chair could break in, or the county counselor, and make it clear that, you know, the language isn't appropriate and it isn't the position of the county. The risk that YouTube would drop us over comments and issues seems low. YouTube seemed to have a fixation on COVID-19 and the 2020 presidential elections. These aren't big issues here now. But even so, I don't think YouTube headquarters in San Bruno, California ought to be dictating what the limits of our freedom of speech and freedom of petition is here in Leavenworth County, either for commissioners or for us citizens. Concerning public comment being uncomfortable, that's part of our democracy. I would really ask, are these concerns that concerning, and suggest we all take a big big deep breath, act as friends and neighbors, and continue YouTube streaming of all public comment. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Okay, now we have Chip DeMoss.
Morning.
Morning.
Chip DeMoss, attorney at law, 16582 Douglas Street, Baser, Kansas. I'm here with respect to the Whiskey Ridge project. Now, I represent Orson LLC and Mr. Dan and Mrs. Cindy Lynch on this. It's my understanding that this board back on February 1st has already approved, subject to conditions by Resolution 2023-04, this special use permit. Is that correct? David, is that your understanding of it?
I'm sorry, please.
You guys the board's already approved the special use permit, is that correct? Back in February?
No,
I thought, the way I read that.
no, it has not been approved.
Okay, my understanding. Okay, so basically, I saw this resolution, although it was an unsigned copy, and I thought it had been approved subject to conditions. Okay? So I guess today we're bringing it before this board and asking you to go ahead and approve the special use permit for Whiskey Ridge. I know there's been some issues with respect to the biggest issue right now has been the fire suppression, the fire sprinkler system. And my clients first looked into that and thought it was going to be cost prohibitive. They did some more digging. They tried to get their application for a variance. They got one from the fire marshal's office that then got pulled after the fact, after it was initially issued. They went to the Board of Appeals that's set up by this board. That was denied there. It's my understanding that one of the members of that board, Mr. Zimmelman, had suggested that he didn't really see any problem.
We can't have
I'm sorry, go ahead.
discussion of what happened with staff or anything, so.
Okay,
just kinda
all right. So,
skip over that. Thank
okay,
you.
I guess my point is, this all started back in 2019, 2020, when they applied for a special use permit. Okay, it was granted on a 5-0 vote. Okay, then everything went haywire during the COVID. The prices of construction materials shot through the roof and skyrocketed. So they decided to hold off. They didn't understand that if you don't take action on a special use permit, apparently it fizzles out after a year and it's no longer enforceable. Mrs. Lynch and her daughter-in-law are pretty much the operations people on this. After a period of time went by, construction kind of calmed down a little bit. They went ahead and built the building. They had one of their people come up and apply for a permit. What he told us was that whoever he dealt with at planning and zoning and for the permitting people told him apply for an accessory building permit to begin with, okay? And then they could later change it to the commercial building once they decided and start operating. So he did that, and they're willing to go ahead and change the permitting now. They built the building. They thought they were still building it under the special use permit originally. They didn't install the fire sprinkler system, so now that's our quandary now. But they have now since then hired an engineer to design a system. They've also gotten at least one bid from a fire sprinkler company, and they're ready to go ahead and proceed with that. The problem...
Your time is up, I'm sorry.
Just one more minute so I
Yeah.
can finish up.
They'll have an agenda. It'll be on the agenda when we talk about it.
Can I just get to the point real fast, if you don't mind?
Okay, or you can come back and talk about it during the agenda.
Either way, whatever you guys say.
Go ahead.
Okay, so bottom line is this. We're asking that you approve the special use permit, but she's already made bookings. People's weddings are planned. They thought they were acting. They didn't do this to just kind of throw it in somebody's face. They did it with the understanding that she was under a special use permit and it was still in force and effect. So you're going to ruin, not you, people's lives are going to get disrupted. What we would ask is that they're going to go ahead and meet all the other requirements. I think they've already done that. They're going to go ahead and install a fire system subject to getting the engineer drawings done and then the sprinkler company coming in and doing it. But they're going to proceed with that.
Okay, why don't we go
allow
ahead
a
and just
fire
discuss
watch?
this instead of violating our
No, that's fine.
protocol during the special use permit when that comes up.
Okay, well, I thought you were going to call me at that point in time. I was kind of surprised you
All
told me.
right.
But okay, that'd be
Thank
fine.
you.
Sure.
Okay, moving on to administrative business. I have a proclamation to read for Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas in federal fiscal year 2021, 3.9 million reports were made to Child Protective Services, and whereas child abuse and neglect is a serious problem affecting every segment of our community, and finding solutions requires input and action from everyone, and whereas our children are our most valuable resources and will shape the future of Kansas, and whereas child abuse can have long-term psychological, emotional, and physical effects, that have lasting consequences for victims of abuse. And whereas protective factors are conditions that reduce or eliminate risk and promote the social, emotional, and developmental well-being of children. And whereas effective child abuse prevention activities succeed because of partnerships created between child welfare professionals, education, health, community, and faith-based organizations, businesses, law enforcement agencies, and families. And whereas communities must make every effort to promote programs and activities that create strong and thriving children and families. And whereas we acknowledge that we must work together as a community to increase awareness about child abuse and contribute to promote the social and emotional well-being of children and families in a safe, stable, and nurturing environment. And whereas prevention remains the best defense for our children and families. Now, therefore, I, Vicki Cos, Chairperson of the Leavenworth County Commission, do hereby proclaim April 23rd as National Child Abuse Prevention Month in Leavenworth County and urge all citizens to recognize this month by dedicating ourselves to the task of improving the quality of life for all children and families. Signed this 29th day of March 2023. Thank you. And there's somebody here from CASA, I believe, so come on up. Thank you. See if you have anything to say.
Do I have anything to say?
Yeah, sure.
You're on the spot now.
Well, I was sent here by Jeray to cover for her today. So, yes, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and CASA has some stuff that we'll be doing in the community. We're partnering up with a couple places in the community as well. Karma Cakes is going to make a special blue cobbler cupcake. And anybody who buys those, a portion of those proceeds will come back to CASA for us to help continue supporting our programs. We have a karaoke night at the 424 Lounge on April 27th, I believe, so everybody can come out for that. Wear blue to support child abuse prevention. Like I said, all of these efforts will help continue to support our programs. We have our CASA program, our SYNC program, our Child Advocacy Center program, parenting classes, all these things that we work together to do to make sure that kids in our community are safe, they're heard, and that action is being taken if somebody has done something to them.
Very much.
Very nice. We appreciate it.
Thank you for what you
Thank
do.
you. We appreciate your support as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to administrative business. Do we have anything else in administrative business? Anybody have anything they wanted? Okay.
A while back, before COVID came in, we started making rounds with other cities. We talked to the city of Leavenworth, we talked to the city of Lansing about how we could work together and just get a feel what each other's future, the things they're doing. If the county commissioners would like, I would sure like to see us try to get together and start making those rounds again, especially with the issue that we have down in Tonganoxie on that road. So that's just my 2 cents to throw it out there and see what the other county commissioners think.
We never made it. I mean, we did 2, but we didn't continue south, so we probably.
And I like even if Easton and Linwood would like to host us. I
think we should do those 2 communities as well.
Just my thoughts.
Good idea.
Commissioner Colson?
Good idea.
That's fine. I only go to my city council meetings. I don't go to anybody else's.
Mike, did
I
you
don't know what's
have-
going on in Bayshore. But Tonganoxie, that I've been involved with that, before, and that's why I said this road is going to happen.
Yeah,
So
I would
gotta get
suggest
something
we do
done.
Tonganoxie first.
I agree with that.
Because this road, there's probably a short-term fix, and then there's a long-term fix, and the long-term fix involves sharing between the community and this county and different.
Well, even the
entities.
short-term fix should be sharing.
Well, I mean, it's all
Maintenance-wise.
subject to
At
being,
least be talking about it.
We need to
We
be
need to
talking
talk
about
about
it because it's coming.
because that road is absolutely going to fall apart.
I went down there the other day after
Yeah.
I talked about it in the work session, and it's all the money we spent on it last summer is not holding up. So we can't keep doing that.
And it's the largest industrial development, in my understanding, in the history of Leavenworth County.
Probably is, and it's also 10 years tax-free. So So there's no money
There's a
coming in to
problem
do it.
there. I'm just-
So,
Okay, and do you have something else, Commissioner Stephen?
Yeah,
that you want?
and that's tax-free, not on behalf of the county, on behalf of the city.
Right. Well,
We did
understand
not
that.
grant that,
Right.
that tax abatement, just to clarify. So I do have a couple things.
Go ahead, please.
My understanding is that I received a letter, and you probably all received this. There's been another violation out at Flatland, and I just was going to inquire with staff, do we know if there's been a fine imposed by KDHE because of this violation?
They don't notify us of that, so I'm not aware.
They don't really notify us of
Or fine or not,
anything,
but
do they?
They did forward that notification that there was a violation.
Yeah. The communication with KDHE and the county has not been robust.
Existent?
Yeah, it's, have we heard back from our request on the documents about the fire that they required us to pay $770?
Actually, it came in significantly less than that, Commissioners. I received the link Monday. I haven't had the opportunity to download the information, but will.
Okay. Second thing, and we covered the second thing was this 222nd Street is
Okay.
to get that on the discussion. Also, I just wanted to let everybody know that Fire District number 2 down in the south part of the county, they're going to be submitting their documents, and they've been working diligently towards that. I just don't know, once you receive the documents, they're going to be, I don't know what the time frame on that would require for you to review them, but
Commissioner, the time frame for review will be relatively brief. The issue will be, has a proper interlocal agreement been presented? You would need to consider that and consider adopting or entering that with the townships in the city of Linwood prior to proceeding to considering a resolution creating the fire district. And again, there is a time deadline with respect to budgeting authority. The entire matter, I would offer, needs to be fully completed by June 1.
yeah, and so they are aware that they're on this tight schedule. The last thing I wanted to ask is, and this is for Mr. Lawfrey, the county administrator, could you review for the public what the new process is that we're following with large developers, and specifically the process that we're following with Call Valley, and I assume that's with any other large developer, what the new process is as opposed to what we have done in the past?
Well, Commissioner, one of the things that, and we've discussed that in a work session here, is that any new development like that requires a development agreement, and that the development agreement be approved before any application for an SUP be considered. That's just like a learning experience through the last time we went through this process. So if a development agreement comes in for us to consider, we'll review it at the staff level, and then work to identify the shortcomings of it, and then bring that proposed development agreement with staff's recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners once we've had a time to prepare it, and the board will make a consideration on whether they agree with staff, and then we will send that response back to the applicant. The good thing is that once we develop a kind of a groundworks or template, it'll be quicker in the future, but this first time through will probably take a little while.
So while we're using a lot of staff time probably for this first initial period, probably future developers will have like you said, a template, so it won't involve as much staff time for future developments, likely.
That's correct. I mean, kind of like when we established the guidelines for traffic studies. The first time we went through it, it was a little bit of a learning experience for everybody. It took us a little while to get it going, but then we established basically procedures from that. And now when somebody new comes in, we just automatically have that document that we provide to them and say, here's the minimums. This is what we're going to have before we even look at anything. That's what we're doing right now at a staff level, both internal staff and with our consultants. We're looking through it and coming up with what we believe will be language that best protects the county's interest in any case, regardless of what the application might be.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be removed from the consent agenda or changed?
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
I had one
Second,
question
first.
on that.
Go
If,
ahead.
last week when we were talking about the letter from the fire marshal, Commissioner Stevens mentioned that the state fire marshal didn't realize that we had building codes. Is that correct?
That was my understanding.
Okay. All right. Well, that's what it says. So they had no idea that we had no building codes.
That's I just read the letter that I just called. The reason I called was to inquire what the effect was of their variance upon our county building codes. That's why I was calling. Wasn't in specifically relation to, I just wanted to know, did that invalidate all of our building codes? Or that's why I was inquiring.
So that's what you gleaned from that letter from the fire marshal.
Yeah,
They didn't understand. Okay.
I mean, we'd have to ask him specifically, but it looks like from what he wrote in the letter.
Okay. All right. So I guess we're good.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I'll begin voting with Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
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 Okay. Consent agenda is approved. Formal board action. Consider a motion to approve the recommendations for allocations from the Leavenworth County City's Drug and Alcohol Abuse Council as presented. Pat, would you like to? Good morning.
Good morning.
Aye.
Please.
You have the recommendations of the council before you. There's nothing particularly different from what we've done in the past. A little bit of increases, but increases are across the board for everything. So
Absolutely.
I think we recognize that there. I did send in this morning the Red Ribbon Week insert that we did, so you would know what that is about in terms of an expenditure for that. And that is the entire, both sides, with information about that. Our other big ad that we will do will be in May at graduation. We always put an ad in, be careful what you're doing as you celebrate and everything. And I think we'll put a little bit of emphasis on fentanyl this time, rather than just the alcohol type thing. I think we're going to have to switch over and put a little more emphasis over there. So, and if you have a moment and you don't mind, I would like to recognize the rest of the council.
Please do.
Absolutely.
All right. Yes. I am no longer the chair of this council.
Oh,
So,
wow.
Laura Thornton is
realize
our
Morning.
new chairperson. Big shoes to fill. But she will, you may continue to see me because it will depend on her schedule. If she can get away, then she will do the presentations in the future, and if not, then I will help her out. So, but, and Laura does live in the Lansing School District. June Foley is another member. She's in the Lansing School District also. Deborah Greger lives in the Leavenworth School District. Barbara Adolphson lives in the Easton School District. John and Teresa Groves are in the Lansing School District. And John is here with us this morning also. And he's
Morning.
our treasurer.
Morning,
Bryn Peter is in the Baser School District. Emily Shoemaker is in the Leavenworth School District but teaches in the Baser School District. And Roy Fain, our newest member, is in the Tonganoxie School District. So
Okay.
we try to, very hard, we try to cover the county. And I think we've done that pretty well. So
Yes.
if there are no questions.
I have no questions.
You ready
I
for
would
a
entertain a motion.
Then Madam Chair, I move that we approve the recommendation for allocations from the Leavenworth County City's Drug and Alcohol Abuse Council as presented.
Second.
Motion and second. Begin voting with Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you very much. And
Thank
thanks
you.
for all the work
Thank
you
you.
do to put
Thank
this
you.
together and meeting
All
and
your
doing
years
all of it.
of chairing that.
Yep. And thank you for your, yes.
I just wanted to point out just a couple things on this. First of all, this is money that is earmarked specifically for this. It comes from the state through a special tax on alcohol sales. It has to be used for this type of
Right.
item. So I just want to make sure people understood that this is the only way we can spend it is on these types
That's
of
right.
items. So, and it comes through a special sales tax on alcohol. So.
Right.
I hope we never lose that.
And I really want to thank Pat Barnhart for all the years that she has chaired and done the work for this committee, because it's been a long time.
How many years?
Wow, how many years is it?
I was going to say,
Wow.
It's just amazing.
Wow.
that's the
So
only
thank
name
you
I've
so
ever
much.
remember being
Thank you so
associated.
Okay. Well, then let's move on to the next agenda item, which would be to approve an agreement for services between Leavenworth County and the Guidance Center. Is there anyone
From the
here?
Guidance Center?
That'd be, I'll take care.
Okay,
I
Mark,
don't think
take care of
anybody
it.
came in. I didn't see him anyways. The county is required to have a community mental health center. We have contracted with the Guidance Center for probably longer than I can remember, but Commissioner Cos has probably been involved with it and may know when that happened. But we've been very happy with the services that we get. Again, this is actually an expenditure approved during the budget, but they need an annual agreement that just so they can provide that to their, their underwriters and their grant applications that they do through the state
And the audit.
and their audit.
Probably more important for the grants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the agreement for services between Leavenworth County and the Guidance Center.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Begin voting with Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. Now we need to consider a motion to approve Resolution 2023-4, a special use permit for Whiskey Ridge Event Center.
Morning, Amy.
Good morning, Commissioners. Before you is again the request for a special use permit for the Whiskey Ridge Event Center. Since you last heard this case, the Board of Building Codes had met for the appeal request from the applicant. They voted to deny that request on a 3-1 vote. We updated your staff report accordingly, so if you have any other questions or comments, I know obviously they're here to speak to you today. So please let the staff know if you do have questions.
I have a question.
Commissioner Stephen, go ahead.
So, at this time, because of the vote, this would indicate that the SUP is not ready to be considered, correct?
At this time, it would mean that they would need to submit a fire suppression system with their commercial building permit would need to come with that fire suppression system. It sounds like they have additional information for you guys to hear today pertaining to that, so I would...
Would we, typically, would it be that we would need to have that installed prior to issuance, or is it typical that we just, grant exceptions?
I don't know what typical would mean. This is the very first case of this nature in the county, so typically it would be a part of the commercial building permit. Since we're in a situation where the building was built before that commercial building permit was issued, we're in a bit of a conundrum. But typically it would be installed when the building is.
David, can I ask, Madam Chair, David, could you go into that a little bit more on Mike's question just there?
Well, Commissioners, this has been before you several times, and it's got quite a history to it, but I'd like to deconstruct it to try to reach some form of a resolution rather than turn this into an exercise of great discussion with no result. From my reading, the Kansas State Fire Marshal utilizes the 2006 building codes with respect to fire safety issues, particularly with respect to buildings that are termed under their nomenclature as assembly sites. Leavenworth County adopted the 2006 building codes, including those sections regarding public fire safety. The reading by your staff was that the building submitted for Whiskey Ridge would require a sprinkling system, and it would need to be an engineered system designed. I think it would also have to, at some point, be inspected by the State Fire Marshal. The State Fire Marshal has specific regulations regarding sprinkler systems. Presuming that an engineered sprinkling system is installed in that building, inspected by the State Fire Marshal and approved, it would fully comply with the county building codes, at least to my understanding. And then the other conditions of the special use permit could be considered. And It would be up to you to decide whether or not to issue that special use permit. I anticipate that you will be requested to conditionally allow operation of Whiskey Ridge while the sprinkling system is being engineered and installed. These are your codes, along with the state fire marshals, that need to be considered. I believe you would have the authority to grant such a request. However, I think that request would also be subject to any conditions imposed by the state fire marshal. And I'm not certain, since I was not privy to the communications to the state fire marshal, other than an email chain that Ms. Allison initiated, as to what question was actually posed to the state fire marshal with respect to the issue of does Whiskey Ridge, as planned, as constructed, and to be improved, comply with the state fire marshal's regulations. So that's an unknown at this point in time. But I anticipate you will be told, in fact you've been told, that the owners of Whiskey Ridge intend to install an engineered sprinkling system. And the primary issue today might be whether you wish to conditionally approve the special use permit or conditionally allow the operation of Whiskey Ridge while that system is installed. If you were to consider that, one primary issue, again, is public safety. The building codes, specifically with respect to fire protection, were not issued simply to have building codes. They're for public safety. So public safety concerns have to be addressed, whether in the final product and in any temporary use of that building.
I have a question on, say, kind of follow-up on that. If we issued an exception and there, God forbid, was a fire, is there any potential liability on the part of the county since we have fire codes and we waived them while the construction was going on?
Well, Commissioner, it'd be speculative on my part to really give you an answer, definitive answer to that question.
Well, I understand, but we have to make a decision, and is there any potential liability?
Any potential? Yes.
And I think we have potential liability when we have businesses operating right now without fire suppression systems.
Anybody can sue.
Why we implemented this.
So anybody can sue anyone for any reason, but I think that one of the things that we need to kind of discuss a little bit, and I don't know what the answer to this is that the buildings that we have existing that we have granted.
Commissioner, Ms. Allison in particular has anticipated that question. She's inquired of the state fire marshal as to whether, because Leavenworth County's building codes are applied prospectively from the date of adoption, not retroactively, what concerns should the county have with respect to any facility that would meet the definition of an assembly site under the state fire marshal's regulations? What responsibility would Leavenworth County have to notify the state fire marshal of the existence of those facilities? State fire marshal's response, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, was essentially that the state fire marshal would have already inspected those premises if inspection was necessary, and that as far as existing assembly site areas that existed prior to the adoption of the building codes, the state fire marshal has accepted responsibility for those. That's my understanding.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, they have had adopted fire codes since the 80s, and they've had the 2006 building code, which they adopted in 2011. They indicated to me that any existing building that predates our building codes, it's still purview to their regulations, but that we would not be responsible unless we wanted to of sending them a list of all those sites.
So prior to codes, the state fire marshal was responsible for inspecting any of our other venues that we approved?
I don't know about inspections per se, just the codes that those structures would have had to be built to.
But their codes, they're all running on 2006, just like we're running on 2006.
David?
Commissioners, if I could offer this, your adoption of building codes did not supersede any authority that the state fire marshal has. The state fire marshal has broad authority with respect to fire prevention and public safety with respect to the suppression of fire in certain buildings. The state fire marshal has authority to enter premises. We will have that authority. had that authority prior to your building codes. So the state fire marshal's role continues. Further, we cannot supplant or adopt any contradictory regulations with respect to those adopted by the state fire marshal. You can adopt more stringent standards, but you cannot adopt less restrictive standards. So any actions that are taken with respect to fire safety issues still involve the state fire marshal.
Another one. So, if the first letter that granted the variance referenced the 2006 building codes at the state fire marshal level, the next day, he rescinded it based on the 2006 fire code or building codes.
Well, Commissioner, and I apologize for not being fully briefed on that. Those letters basically contain answers to a question which I'm not certain what the contents of the question was. So I can't really offer you much guidance on those two letters other than words that speak for themselves.
And what is the effect of the decision by the codes body that was made? Because when we talked about this at a previous meeting, it was pretty much said that whatever the codes, I don't know what we call them, the codes commission or the building codes committee, whatever their decision was, that was going to be a final decision. Is that, and that would be dispositive of what the ultimate outcome would be?
Commissioners, you created a building codes appeal board to determine matters of interpretation of your building codes, and that is to provide relief from any person with respect to interpretations offered by your staff. The idea was that that board would serve in a similar capacity as your Board of Zoning Appeals does, and its decisions would be binding, subject to any appeal to district court. It's my understanding the Building Codes Appeal Board did consider a request for a variance and did deny that. At the same time, however, I have to state this. There's no precedent to rely upon in this matter. As Ms. Allison accurately stated, that you only recently adopted building codes. This is the first time we've had any substantive issue with respect to them. So you're in either uncharted waters or unplowed ground. I'll use unplowed ground because you can determine the direction you really want to go in at this point in time. But I will say this, regardless of anything you do, the state fire marshal's role in this matter continues.
Okay, I have one question, and now we have existing special use permits, and any change that would happen if they wanted to expand, if there was anything that those individuals wanted to do that would change, the use or expand the number of people that they were going to serve and all of those types of things, then they would fall under the regulations of the new fire code requirements. Now, that's my first question. That's correct? Okay.
Your building codes would come into effect if there is any substantial change in the special use permit use.
Right.
For the entire building or for the new constructed part of the building?
It'd be the entire building.
The entire building.
I think the way we adopted the code, it's anytime the building has changed 50% or more, they would have to bring it up to the current code. Or if they build new construction, it would have to be built to the code.
So my next question, and it's just for me to begin to process how I want to decide on this matter, is were that building, that individual or that business to want to operate as they were adding sprinkling to the existing part of the building, as they were doing this, as they were constructing, would they be prohibited from having any events at their venue?
Under your current code, yes. That's why they're asking for the exception.
So that I'm just,
Commissioner,
You would ask for that with a fire marshal.
no, I'm trying to, see what would happen. And so then my assumption would be that we would be back again if someone else was coming to change, to have to sprinkle. We would be being asked again for the same. No, I'm just, and what is our position on that? Or is that something that we want to work through or talk about? Because there are all those different venues, and as they grow or remodel or
What's the time frame for you to be able to get the sprinklers put in?
We have a bid and a half right now. They're currently telling us we're 6 months out from being able to get that done.
And how many events would it involve you having to cancel?
Maybe 10.
And if I may make a few more comments, it's all right. Yeah, okay, all right. If you look back at the state fire marshal's first variance, he does reference the code, 2006 code, and he says the building will have a full fire detection system and automatic smoke detection, which is beyond the requirements of the code. So instead of that, now they're going to go into the fire sprinkler system. And as Cindy just mentioned, what they're proposing, because Mr. Van Paris mentioned public safety, and that seems to be what you guys are really concerned with, which makes perfectly good sense. We're proposing a fire watch during each of these events until the sprinkler system is put in, which basically means firemen on site with a fire truck who, the way I understand it, is at least every 30 minutes are walking the perimeter of the building and checking things out to make sure there's no fire taking place, and if so, they're ready right on site. I mean, I don't think you can have much better public safety than that. I would think that's much safer than a sprinkler system even. And this building was constructed in a manner so it's not really something that's going to be likely to have a fire. There's no kitchen built in. Every food will be catered, so they don't have a built-in kitchen. I think Mr. Lynch told me he put 5/8" sheetrock all on the interior, which gives them extra time. The egress areas are 200% what is required by the code. So, and the fire marshal acknowledged that because they had to submit quite a few documents, from my understanding, to the fire marshal to even get the initial variance before it was rescinded. So I think we've got the safety issue under control, and we're just asking you to please, go ahead and let them proceed and just tell them they've got to have it done within a year or so. Because we're kind of at the mercy of, from a time standpoint, of the contractors coming in when they get their time, put them on the schedule. But they're moving forward trying to get it done. So,
Yeah, Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, please.
My main concern's been what you just brought up. Has been I support this event there. I think that more things like that in the county are needed. But also on a safety form, I'm very concerned. I could not live with myself as one event caused one life because we didn't enforce our code. After saying that, one of the things I've kicked around before, just me, thinking about it, is that we had somebody on site to do exactly what you're saying. But for me to vote yes or something like that, I'd have to see that contract. I'd have to see that agreement to know that this is going to happen and going to be in front of us and that people will be there. Because all it takes is one time somebody doesn't show up. Because I'm very concerned about this. In good conscience, I'm having a real tough time voting to let you go ahead and do it without something that I know is going to cover the people that are going to be at that event.
well, I know. I mean, if you put that in as one of their conditions, they'll have to comply with it. And I know that the Lynches have had contact with their, I think it's Stranger Fire Township department right there, and they're ready to go. And they've already got people lined up. The volunteer firemen are going to be there with the fire truck. I mean,
And
this will all be at the cost of the Lynches and has nothing to. There's no cost to the county, no cost to the fire district.
And if there's something happened and they couldn't make it one time, that event could not be a go. So you're really hanging it out there.
We're fine with that. They'd be fine with that.
And again, I would like, just me speaking, I'd like to see the agreement from the fire department on that.
We can sure request one from the fire department. That's, we have no
Just my
problem with that.
thoughts.
So you're asking it to be tabled till then?
Well,
Or can we just pass it on that agreement, that be a condition of the special use permit?
well, I would think if we could get that. When's your event? When's your first event?
We have an event
Last
on
week.
Sunday. We have a small shower,
Sunday?
bridal shower.
I don't see why you couldn't bring that into the staff and have it on file if you're going to do that before you do it. I would want to see that in my hands or like that before I said anything before that I couldn't support. But I think where Commissioner Smith is going to, if we have that in front of us from the fire chief, that this is the date you're going to be there, and then I would probably not have as much problem. But I must say again, if there's any time that the fire department gets an emergency and they can't be at that event, then you can't operate it.
That's
the other thing, let me finish. The other thing is, 6 months, 8 months would be the most I'd give. This is something that I want to see done quickly. It's not something I want to see done in a year, because I would suggest very strongly, if the board decides to pass that, not to bring that back in front of me again, saying you need more time, because I'm not going to allow more time. This is a safety issue, and it really concerns me. I'm an old police chief. I've been involved in fires. I know what can happen. So I'm gonna always go towards the safety in that issue. At the same time, I applaud you for the events and what you're trying to do, because we need more of those.
Mr. Stephen?
I've tried to support everything that you guys have done, but when we schedule events before we have it seems like the cart before the horse. We're scheduling events before we have the special use permit in place, and I think, as we're talking to you, if we'll be good citizens, we're gonna work together. We're not going to do that anymore once we have all this put together. We're that's the thing, because everybody else in the county, if they don't get to operate their special use permits until it's in place.
I think I touched on that the first time I was standing up here. They honestly thought that the old special use permit was in place. So that's why they did that. It's not a matter of just saying, we're going to put the cart before the horse.
Well, but not the most recent things that have happened. Not the most recent.
I mean, most people, a lot of people schedule weddings out a year, 2 years in advance these days. I mean, because it takes that long for them to be able to get the venue. So.
I understand that, but that's not our issue.
No, I understand. I fully understand.
We're here to look out for the citizens, and I'm trying to work through this for you so you can continue.
And we appreciate that.
And after I don't know if you know the history of this, but after the tornado came through, we had a lot of folks down in the southern part, and we had a church that was damaged, and then issue came up with the repair of the church and the state fire marshal wanting sprinklers installed, and the insurance company balked and said no, because we're not paying for sprinklers because you didn't have sprinklers and there's no county codes in place. So there was a big problem with getting insurance to cover the reconstruction required, and so, example, Elm Grove Church has sprinklers, and they were required. The state fire marshal was requiring that. So that was kind of the genesis of how Leavenworth County ended up the beginnings of this having basic codes, and they are very, very basic codes. But the concern is that if you had an event and there was a fire, that's the concern. I mean, it's truly that we're trying to protect the public.
We're done with the fire suppression and the fire sprinklers. We understand we're not going to be able to move forward without them. We're kind of at the mercy of the people installing the systems at this point. We're at least 6 months out. If we can find somebody to install them sooner, we're ready.
And I personally am good with what Commissioner Smith has said.
Can I have one more question, too? When you get old, your mind starts circling more and more, so y'all bear with me.
I know that feeling too.
Drain.
Don't help me, Commissioner Smith. When you talk about you're going to have the fire, talking to them, is there going to be a fire suppression vehicle on site?
My understanding is there will be a fire truck on site.
Well, it has to be, if you want my okay.
Yes. I mean, yeah.
The second thing is, how many staff members in the fire department are going to be there? Is this going to be one? Is it going to be two?
I
There's
think.
going to be two.
Okay.
We're at the ready.
Okay. Okay,
They
thank
are
you.
volunteer fire departments. We are offering to pay them an hourly fee to bring their truck in. So they said there is no problem getting volunteers.
Okay, thank you.
And if you really think about it, that might even be safer than the other event locations that don't before that were grandfathered in without the code.
You're a good attorney. Let's stay to the facts on this one, okay? Well, we need to go. Excuse me.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Not really. I mean, it's just a condition of a special use permit of I having the fire department there until they get their sprinklers in. And I think Commissioner Mike Smith said 8 months would be his max.
Yeah, that's right. I think so too. I'll put it like this to you. As long as we've got the folks there and it's done within a year, I'd like to see it done sooner than later. My only main thing is I want to see that agreement between the fire department and these folks before anything goes further. And if they're in contact with them, I'm sure they can get that to our counselor this week.
Mm-hmm.
I would think.
If we said 6 months and there was a extenuating circumstance, because we know that there's a lot of supply chain issues, et cetera, that we could leave a provision in there that they could
Or we could do
have
the
additional
the
time.
end of the year or something, because we're already on 1st of April just about.
Hey, I still think the 8 months is good, and they can always come before us. I'm sure they don't want to visit us again if
That's what I'm
they're
saying.
6 months and 10 days. So I would think 8 months would be fine. Just my thoughts. End of the year, Doug, same thing.
Is that your
By the
motion?
beginning of 2024.
Commissioners, before you make a motion, I think you need to make sure that it's a conditional approval. It's not, you're not approving the resolution, you're conditionally approving the
Correct.
resolution. I think
Correct.
that the county counselor can provide you with the right language for any.
And I'm sure their attorney understands that.
Can we?
And I would also recommend that it be not just approving the SUP, but that you put that this is only an 8-month SUP. Because right now, SUPs are
Yes.
in perpetuity if you
Right.
approve them. So
Good
you have
point.
to-
Good
You have
point.
to limit it specifically in your motion.
And should we have the county counselor draft all this and bring it to us next week? So that it's, because we've made mistakes making these motions on the fly.
Well, I think we have to make a decision now if we're going to go
Well, it's a
forward.
decision, but with the actual language.
The
maybe-
resolution.
Well, I just want to see the agreement, and then and the county counselor give him time to do that.
Can we, it's.
We're not going to do a resolution. We won't.
We won't do a resolution, just do
Now, what would you call it,
approval of a special
David?
use permit for 8 months.
Commissioners, I'll caption everything by saying, if you ask me a question and want an immediate answer, I'll certainly give you an answer. I'm not going to vouch as to how accurate it will be or how satisfactory it will be the next day. I can probably, say in the next 20 minutes, draft out a rough sketch of the conditions that have been discussed and have that back to you. But you've got several things such as the other conditions of the special use permit that your staff had recommended to you. I believe those would still be in existence. A requirement that the property be sprinkled within, say, 6 to 8 months, subject to extension upon extenuating circumstances, et cetera, that during such time as the sprinkler system has not been approved by the state fire marshal, that any event would require 2 firefighters and a fire truck be present at all times during the event. Such other provisions that have been discussed. But
Can we just do a consensus of the board that this is our decision, and you bring us that language next week? I mean,
We
is
have to
that-
vote on.
We have to vote on it because they want one Sunday, Mike.
Commissioner, I
Okay.
think Mr. Lawfrey offered you the road or the path on this. It might be, if you wish to, because these are matters subject to your prerogatives, you could conditionally approve a special use permit for Whiskey Ridge, subject to the matter being, a resolution being presented to you next week, subject to the contract that was referenced being submitted for staff review, and give us time to prepare the other conditions for your consideration. That would be your option. However, it needs to be stressed that it would be conditionally approved.
And that would include the agreement with the fire division this week in our hands.
Yes, that's the contract that I
Okay.
believe was discussed.
Okay,
That's your motion?
that's the most, so moved.
And I'll second it.
Because this is an
Further
official
discussion?
motion, can we make sure we clarify that? I know sometimes we have a hard time.
Go ahead, Mark, repeat it again.
You need to draft a.
Could I bring you a rough sketch motion and have that back to you
Sure.
in 10 minutes?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, is that okay?
That's fine. We'll
Okay.
suspend this.
Commissioners, I will do that, provided that you agree to hear the next matter on your agenda.
Mr. Knoll.
We're not going to sit and wait for 10 minutes.
That's fine.
Oh,
Right,
Bill.
we'll
Yeah.
just suspend the discussion and the vote on this
We
until
need to
we
withdraw that
have,
motion?
until we have something come back.
I withdraw
No, I'm
my
just saying.
second.
I withdraw
Yeah,
the
we need
motion. Okay.
Are you going to withdraw your motion?
Yeah.
No?
And
I withdraw my
You
second.
withdraw, okay, and so we did not vote, so we're We're good to go.
Are you going to let them know about next year?
Okay. Mr. Knoll, we need to consider a motion to authorize Public Works to sign and accept the federal fund exchange allocated to Leavenworth County at the state rate of 90 cents to $1 to the dollar federal funds.
Commissioners, this is an annual agreement that comes before you each year at about this time. The state does administrate these funds. I do not know in my experiences that anyone ever has the opportunity to not take the 90 cents exchange rate on the dollar, because you have to have a project that is designed to federal standards through the FHWA. We currently do not have any. There may be an opportunity for that 100% return for future allocations if we were able to use some of our Safe Streets for All FHWA federal grant in the future, but not this year. So would like to add one other bit of information to this. It was notified at the District 1 meeting that they held last week from Todd Salfrank with KDOT that next year they're anticipating that they will be reducing this 90 cents on the dollar by 12 additional %. This will go along with another unmandated or state-mandated defunding of the counties. The federal government, or FHWA, apparently is requiring the state to allocate their off-system bridge program at a higher allocation amount. Currently, the counties own about 70% of the bridges in the state of Kansas, and obviously 70% of the bridge money coming to the state of Kansas isn't coming to the counties. Last year, they allocated $10 million statewide for all 105 counties through the off-system bridge program, and they are going to increase that amount by the $2 million. So all that said, we should anticipate as a revenue for our 2024 budget, which this is listed as a revenue in our operating budget, an additional 12% reduction of the 90 cents on the 78 cents. It will be another unfunded mandate. And then also, we may or may not qualify. As you guys know, $12 million in bridges does not go very far in an entire state.
Boy, you're just full of good news.
I have not received that in writing. Todd Salfrank is a bureau chief, so I would take it verbally passed along. I don't believe that we're going to notify the counties in writing prior to the budget process occurring. And so he wanted to make that announcement because he knew that the counties would be starting their budget processes now for 2024, and that notification more than likely come after the budget was complete.
And with the price of the bridges now?
The bridges are up significantly.
Very significant. Where are we going to get the money? So, you ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion.
Okay. I move that we authorize Public Works to sign and accept the federal fund exchange allocated to Leavenworth County at the state rate of 90 cents to the dollar federal funds.
Second.
Motion is second. Begin voting with Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Yes?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank
All
you
right,
very much,
you,
Bill.
Commissioners.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay. Next
Thank
up,
you.
consider a motion to approve the public comment policy.
I'll start with that if I could,
Sure.
if that's all right.
Go ahead.
You know, last week I think we did a bang-up job improving the existing way we do business, because I know we've always talked about transparency and trying to show it. But I still feel that we need to have the public comment aired, whether you can do it like other cities, you do an 8-second delay, you get a release that our counselor writes up, you show it the next day. I just think it's so important to have that public comment. I know when I was a chair, and I know with Commissioner Cawes' chair, we will cut it short and quick if somebody gets out of line and have them removed from the building. I just think it's important to have that in front of people. I'm open for suggestions how to get there, but I just think that's something that we should be showing to the folks out there.
Well, when we were all agreed to go with this, I originally asked to have an opinion from our insurance company. And I dropped that request because I thought we were dropping the non-agenda. But if we're going to continue with non-agenda being televised, I would sure like an opinion from our insurance company on the liability of it. Because we are not in the best graces with our insurance company.
Our insurance company to this date has not contacted us about the YouTube policy.
We haven't asked.
Well, if there was a complaint, we would hear from them.
Well, if we're not going to pass this today, I would like to have a consensus that someone on our staff reach out and ask of our insurance company of the liability of it.
If I could, this policy does not address whether there are public comments on YouTube or not. That's
Right.
a directive of the Board of County Commissioners.
Right.
Currently, once this is passed, the direction from the Board of County Commissioners was that the public comment at the beginning may not be televised. That's staff's understanding. That was how we intended to proceed, but it's not part of this policy. So approving this policy doesn't commit you one way or the other on that, because this is just about the public comment that you expect the public to follow if they want to come in and provide a comment. The airing of public comment on YouTube is a decision of the Board of County Commissioners that can be, you can either take it back up, give different direction, which is the current direction is it will not be once this policy goes into effect. If you want to give different direction, you can do that at any time. It does not require an amendment to this policy.
But we could amend the policy to include that we are going to air live stream the events. It wouldn't be. There's nothing saying we couldn't include that in the policy.
It's not currently in there. If you want to include it, you
Right.
can. It really has little to do with what you expect the public to follow as far as the rules, but you could include it if you wanted to. If you did that, as I always say, it needs to be amended and brought back rather than amended on the fly. That way we don't make a change that not everybody is in agreement with. Similar to what we're doing right now.
Also, the question that Commissioner Smith would want to have answered would need to be brought back too. So approving it today, in my opinion, would not be the thing to do until we get this other question lined out.
I think there's just a couple of things I want to clarify, and one being that the airing of public comment, regardless of when it takes place, is no more important to the county commissioners what people have to say than when we receive an email or when we receive a phone call. And we don't have a mechanism for making sure everybody knows what has been said in a phone call, what has been said in an email. We do not have a mechanism in place that guarantees that every person who calls or emails is heard. So I think that it's that's just for me, it's like those are just as important as somebody that comes to the microphone and speaks to us. I find it just as valuable to have that information. I just want to make that clear, that it has nothing to do with not wanting to hear from the public, and whether or not it is aired on YouTube or any other mechanism, that has nothing to do with what I am saying. But what has concerned me, and it has happened multiple times, whether you've been here or not, since I have been a commissioner in the 4 years, we have had individuals who have had their reputations smeared from that microphone in the open public comment aspect of our meetings, and it was very difficult to handle. It was very difficult to deal with the individuals who had been slandered. I had to deal with some of the fallout of that, and it was completely avoidable had we not had that, or even have non-agenda item public comment. I'm just saying it was very unsettling to me, and to have to deal with, and I'm not going into the personal issues of the people who have been affected by it, but it affected individuals. They are human beings that are as important as any person that has an opinion on that at that microphone. And that is what bothered me, and that is why I have kind of pushed about the public comment aspect of our meetings when it is a non-agenda item. So I just want to be clear. It's not that I don't want to hear from people. I've wanted to hear from the Whiskey Ridge individuals. I care about what they think. I care about what is going on with them. It is just, but I don't think it's appropriate if an individual comes up and begins to attack someone and uses that as a mechanism to do so. So that's.
When we had the work session, I was willing to say we'd agree to that, but I have to say I received so many communications from constituents and people in the district that I think it would be a mistake for us to take it off of YouTube. Now, whether we after the live stream, maybe if there was an offensive comment made, that could be.
You can't take it back once it's live.
Well, but we stream it. I mean, it's the historical recording could be amended, but I think after looking at YouTube, anybody that's looked at YouTube or any social media, there's tremendous amounts of things that are negative. So, and we are county commissioners. We're going to face negative comments from that podium.
I'm not worried about negative comments about us.
We're still going to hear it,
but
we're still having it.
Right. But I think part of the public that can't not attend, which live in Tonganoxie, 40 minutes away in Linwood, to cut them off of the ability to hear what the public is saying to the commission, I think that would be a mistake.
One person of the public is saying to the commission, not the public at large. And we're a representative government. We represent all of the people.
I know, but this is public comment, and I'm just saying that I have reconsidered my position on that. I do think we should continue to live stream on YouTube. And I do have another thing to bring up on this policy once we're done talking about this specific thing.
I have no problem with agenda items being YouTube. It's the non-agenda items, the open mic thing. We have no idea what they're going to say. So, and I would just really would like an opinion from our insurance company on the liability of it. So I'd say we're going to be tabling this for, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
I don't know how long it would take them to get back to us. We can submit the question.
So can I bring up the other?
Go ahead.
The other item, I was going to offer an additional amendment. Amend paragraph 3, line 2. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes, and time with speakers heard on a first-come, first-served basis, and a waiting list will be established until all time has expired. That's as opposed to just having a limitation on the spots being, if you look at paragraph 4, if you look at we limit the speaker slots to 10 spots, but if you don't use your entire time, there's no reason we can't have a waiting list for folks to, on a first-come, first-served basis, to be able to use the entire 30 minutes.
I think the reason we didn't put that on there before was that you have the potential for somebody to sign up for public comment expecting they're going to drive up here 40 minutes to speak, and then there isn't time because somebody has used all their time. That's the only reason it wasn't in there. So I can amend that if that's the direction of the board.
But I mean, you're never guaranteed you're going to get to speak. But if you get on the list, and because a lot of times folks don't speak.
If it's an agenda item, you're guaranteed to speak.
Well, I'm talking about
on this new policy. If it's an agenda item, we're going to allow public comment.
I'm talking
when
about
the agenda item comes up.
Paragraph 4 is non-agenda items is what we're talking about, and that's the amendment that I would offer. Is to the suggested change I would say is to, if they don't use all their time, then the time moves on so we can let other speakers be allowed to be heard.
Well, right now, I'm looking at this again. Mark, correct me. Right now, if we pass this, we're still requiring people to call in and sign up on the audience participation. Is that correct?
I believe the language says that we will accept sign up for agenda items and non-agenda items up until 8:30 the morning of the meeting.
Yeah, Mike, I don't have any problem with the way that's written because
but it says no more than 10 spots. So if you used 1 minute,
Yeah, but then you're really just bringing in. I think if somebody wants to speak, that they're going to know ahead of time, and they can make that call, so we can keep this at least running organized.
Well, if you have
If it's a non-agenda item, they can know that the slots are taken, and they can come another day. I mean, we have another week.
But
that
if we
they
have
can-
30 minutes and people don't use their time, why can't we allow them something to speak?
I think it's only fair to staff and everyone else that, it's like surprise, like you get to know what's the question so you can be prepared for it
Well,
to a
that's
certain
what
degree.
non-agenda items does.
I know.
It's a surprise.
Yes. Well, I mean, this is just allowing, if you give up your time, like if you have the 3 minutes, but you only use 1 minute, there's those other 2 minutes are remaining for your spot. So now somebody else could be on.
I
You
don't-
just have limited.
I don't want to make this so complicated, Mike. I'm fine with the way they presented, except for that one part.
That's why I thought we decided this in the work session, and that's why staff prepared the document.
I don't know if this specific issue was talked about in the work session about how the spots were going to be counted.
Well-
Whether we've said 30 minutes, but this policy limits it to 10 spots.
But we have the discretion, it's our policy, we have the discretion if somebody's here and there's extra time to go ahead and say, yes, you may go ahead and have your,
But should we put that in the policy?
I don't think it's necessary to have in a policy. That is our discretion. The policy is,
Well, the policy says 10 spots.
10 spots. That's fine. But I'm saying today we allowed a few more minutes for the attorney just to finish up what he was going to say. Didn't have to do that. What I'm saying is that we do have some level of discretion. If we do not control a meeting, this is a business meeting. And that's what we need to continue to understand, is that this is a business meeting. And we need to conduct business in a business-like fashion.
But if we're saying we're allowing 30 minutes at the beginning of the meeting for public comment, and not all that time is used.
Then we go immediately into our meeting.
I understand, but there's no reason that if there's other people that would like to be heard, that they can't have an opportunity if they're within that time.
We might as well just keep the policy we got and have it at the end of the meeting so we can get our business done.
Well, then you're opening the whole thing. This wasn't discussed last week during the work session.
Mike, I have no
spots.
problem the way it's written now. So with that part of it, I do have on the
Either
audience.
way, we can't vote on it today.
Yeah, I know, but at least clear that part up. So I think there's 3 of us that like
Jeff,
that.
do you have anything to say?
I just want to make sure people understand the way the statute's written. If you guys look it up, we don't have to allow anybody to talk. That's the way the statute reads. We choose to do that. We want to hear from the public.
Exactly.
So we
Right.
made a Leavenworth County policy to hear people talk.
You
Even
hear
though the
all
state
this free
statute
speech
says,
stuff.
yeah, the state statute says we have to allow them to the public meeting, but we don't have to allow anybody to talk. That's what the state statute says. Leavenworth County chooses to listen to people and hear people and let people talk.
Right.
And that's what we've done. And also I wanted to point out, before this board, before Doug was on the board, we didn't have YouTube
Exactly.
broadcasting. So we're trying to be as transparent as possible.
And people accuse us of not.
Yeah, so
honoring
as soon
free
as we
speech.
mention,
You're allowing
not
free speech.
broadcasting just the public part of the non-agenda items on YouTube, everybody's going crazy, which I understand. It's hard to go back a step. Once you've offered something, it's hard to back up a step. So the other thing I wanted to just make sure is I've read this 5 times. This doesn't say anything about not broadcasting YouTube, right? So that's not even what we're talking about today. Because all the emails and phone calls I've been getting is, you need to vote this morning to keep it on YouTube. Well, that's not even what we're voting on today. This is not about broadcasting or not broadcasting public comment. This is just tweaking the policy that we already have in place. Basically putting it at the beginning of the meeting instead of at the end. That's really all this is doing. So.
But at our work session, it was discussed.
That's correct.
Right.
So I mean, that's why the public is concerned. So.
Yeah.
So are we going to move to table this?
Y'all might have enough votes to pass it.
Well, we need to, we'll wait for
2 weeks.
some
Opinion from the
modification
insurance
opinion
company.
from the insurance company and
Go from there.
go from there. So
Motion to table it, is that what you're looking for?
Second it.
Okay.
That was your motion, right?
Yeah.
Motion to table is
For how
second.
2 weeks?
For
2 weeks, yeah.
All right, I'll second that.
Aye.
Okay, begin voting with you. Aye.
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 Thank you.
Next. Are we going back to the other one?
Or do we want to go for the release of the 1830 and then go back to the other one?
Whatever you want to do.
Whatever you want to do.
Are we
Shirley.
ready for this, or do we have any
I think
more?
we probably can go to the lease on 1830.
Okay, let's go to the lease on 1830 first. Okay. I need a motion to approve an agreement for the release of 1830 South Broadway building, which was the place where the Council on Aging used to be.
Madam Chairman, members of the commission, reached out to the landlord of 1830 South Broadway that the county is under lease with, and previously housed the Council on Aging there. They are no longer there, as you're well aware of. I reached out to counsel for the lessor, landlord, with respect to a proposal to terminate the lease early. Right now, its termination date is December 31st, 2024, and to terminate the financial obligation of the county under that lease for an agreed-upon amount. I received a response back that was within 10% of the proposed amount, that amount now being $75,000 to more or less pay off the lease. It's a substantial savings to the county. I cite that in my RBA to you, and it's my recommendation that you approve this proposal to be finalized, an agreement I'll prepare with their counsel.
Question.
Go ahead. Question,
On the lease agreement, wasn't there a clause in there that we could terminate the lease with proper notice?
The lease had a 3-year rolling renewal date. Because the Council on Aging could not move out until December of 2022, the anniversary date, which occurred in July of 2022, rolled past. So a new 3-year lease began on January 1, 2023, or 2022. Bottom line is this, Commissioner, we have approximately 30 plus more, well, not 12. We have 1 year and 3 quarters remaining on that lease, and the proposal basically buys it out for half that amount, roughly a little bit more than half.
Okay.
There was nothing left, excuse me, there was nothing that says in 30 or 60 or 9 days we couldn't remove ourselves from that lease. We had to wait the entire time.
No. When that lease was entered into, it was determined you needed a place to house the Council on Aging. It was a 3-year renewal lease because contemplation at that time was that if Council on Aging would be removed from those premises, it would be after you had constructed a new building. And 3 years was considered more than adequate time to do that. However, fortune smiled upon you. You gained the former Cushing building where the Council on Aging is currently housed. This would effectively end the county's long relationship with the building located at 1830 South Broadway.
I guess it's a little late to start worrying about saving any money on that building because the county owned it and sold it and leased it back. So I guess there's never going to be any way to save any money there.
I've been dealing with this building since 1990, and it has never saved the county money. The question is, can we cost the county less?
So we can stop digging the hole once we do this?
Yes.
This reminds me of something Commissioner Shimke always said.
Which, it's
on the back of our shirts, I think.
Yeah, this will be the end of the selling the building and then leasing it back.
Yep, that's the good.
For more money than what we
silver
sold it
lining
for.
is at least it's done.
And the price that we paid for the Cushing facility was a deal.
Absolutely,
I think so.
And
Thank you, Vicki.
Because of the curse of COVID, the ARPA funds
I still can't make the motion.
were
I don't want to be associated.
were available to do the renovations that were necessary to bring that building to what it is now. And
We're basically saving the county $100,000 a year rent on a building that we used to
On
own.
a building that we sold for $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
and
And now
We
we're in a
didn't.
building.
We didn't. I believe it's 105, wasn't it?
Yep.
Something like that. And then we leased it back for
And we didn't spend $12 million on it.
Yeah, the rent, and in the lease, we were responsible for some of the maintenance too. So it
Right.
ended
Which is
up being about
unbelievable.
$100,000 a
And
year.
utilities and all of those things. And
And it's a beautiful building if you have a chance to go see it, anybody.
yes, it is.
I've been in it.
You can come visit me in my new office there.
You have to come visit us.
Are you right?
I'm here.
I make a motion to approve an agreement for release of the lease at 1830 South Broadway Building.
Second.
The motion is second. Begin voting with Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
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 The motion carries. So we're going to be out of the lease. Yes. And now we're going to move back up to the Whiskey Ridge.
I've got a motion.
Resolution?
Madam Chair, if you want me to read it,
Yes.
it's a long one, but it's okay.
Okay, Commissioner Smith will read the motion.
Just one question.
Okay. We could have done
Did you
discussion.
want to put, instead of 6 months, January 1st, 2024? I thought that's what we,
Where was it? I haven't read it all the way through.
The date.
Be a recent agreement.
I think, Commissioners, what the county councilor is proposing is that you just do a temporary approval, condition of approval, so that we can get a formal resolution.
Yeah, this is
Because I don't,
this is just, yeah, that's
I don't
right.
like making these on the
That's
fly,
right.
and there's
That's
a lot
right.
that we need to
That's
consider.
right. Okay.
Commissioner, you could read the entire motion along with the new subsection D that I proposed, and I would suggest that you do so.
Okay. It's okay, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead and read the motion.
I move that this board conditionally approve the application by Orson Lessee for a special use permit to operate a facility colony known as Whiskey Ridge. The conditions to which the conditional approval is subject to are as follows. Town attorney wrote this. 1, compliance with conditions set out by the staff in the previous submitted resolution regarding this application. 2, that with respect to compliance with the building codes adopted by the county, Orson LLC be allowed to, on a temporary basis only, operate without an installed engineer sprinkler system approved by the state fire marshal, subject to the following additional conditions. A, that prior to the approval by the state fire marshal of a sprinkler system at the facility, not less than 2 firefighters, along with a township fire truck with firefighting equipment, be present on site during all hours of operation. That the presence be confirmed by an agreement between Orson LLC and the Township Fire Department, said agreement to present it to staff no later 5 p.m. Friday, March 31st, 2023. B, the Orson LLC comply with any directive or order of the State Fire Marshal. C, that the Orson undertake affirmative action to have an engineered sprinkler system installed at the premise not later than 6 months from the date of this motion, subject to extension upon showing of good cause. And D, that this approval be considered to be a temporary special use permit that expires April 5th, 2023, to be replaced by a special resolution granting conditional approval of a special use permit.
second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion?
I do have one thing
Stephen.
for
Of course.
staff. This is for staff. How, moving forward, working with planning and zoning, how are we going to, when we have additional event centers and code compliant applicants, how are we going to make sure that we don't have to revisit and make exceptions consistently like this? Because this feels like a bit of a jerky process here.
That's kind of
Commissioner,
what I
I'm
was
going to
asking.
say a couple of things that are probably uncomfortable to some people in this room, if you want me to answer that.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. The process was there. That the applicant didn't follow the process because they didn't understand it, the process was still there. We are granting a usage for somebody who didn't follow the rules, whether they knew them or not. They didn't follow the rules, but the rules were there. The applicant has since agreed to bring it up to code, but the building could have been built to code to begin with. That's where we were at with this. That's what started all this. So the herky-jerky process here is that you are granting an application at the last minute to accommodate this so that the people who are using the facility are not inconvenienced because of the process. But you adopted building codes. Your staff has the obligation to make sure those building codes are followed. So that's how this got to here. Had the applicant put the fire sprinkler system in to begin with, we would not be here. Or if the board wouldn't have approved building codes, we wouldn't be here. But that's where we're at. So the inconvenient truth is there is no guarantee that this won't happen again.
That's correct.
There we go.
And
There you are. There you have it.
there we are, and that's why we are where we are, and the decision is definitely not that we've inconvenienced Whiskey Ridge. It's what happens to and that was one of the questions that I had, and it wasn't in this, and so we need to discuss a little bit. How many events are they going to continue to schedule over the next 8 months?
We have 10 scheduled through what? How long is that in the future?
Jeez, come on.
So, I mean, that's probably for the end of the year.
Okay. So that answers it.
But there will be more scheduled or not?
Well, till the end of the year, and then the sprinkler system will be in place.
I understand.
In between is what she's asking.
Oh.
Will there be any more in between the next 6 to 8 months? I think is the question.
Certainly, I would think so.
Limited to that, as long as we have fire staff on board. Is that something that you're going to limit us to?
Oh, but
I think what you're approving is that they continue to operate. And so
Yeah.
operating means
I'm just
scheduling
clarifying all of
events.
that.
I think
there's
they
any
could,
limit on that.
as long as they got the firefighter
There's no
folks there,
Yeah.
I think that's what
They
that's
get the fire
saying.
sprinkler
Right,
put in
right.
place.
It's just clarification.
It was not my understanding that you intended to limit it to 10
No.
events only.
Right, I was just making clarification. That was my,
The other thing is, too, that the staff did a bang-up job on this, but I also think as elected officials, sometimes things go outside the gray area that we have to take a look at and bring back in and see how we can correct them. Again, I would never even suggested this if we didn't have some way of protecting people down there. And so that's the reason I brought that up.
And I just want to say one more thing. I received phone calls about 2 weeks ago about a certain event that had been scheduled there, and it was like the county's the bad guy about a certain event. And the event sounded like a wonderful event, a wonderful event, and I would have supported that event. But we were not the reason that event couldn't take place.
Yep.
And it was because the policies are in place and we have staff that enforces the policies. You know, to blame the actual commissioners for that, that's not the way it works. You got to follow the rule of law, and the rule of law is the policies we have.
Wyandotte County appreciated. I'm sure they've seen an uptick in sales tax for that event.
Well, and I would have loved to have been able to have that event here. And in the future, we will.
Drive so far.
We got a motion second, I think.
have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, begin voting with Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Hi.
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Commissioners, I was reminded by Mr. Richmar, it took me more than 10 minutes to prepare that, so I do apologize to you.
John's good on time. He's good on time.
But we got through the agenda, so.
And we will draft the formal resolution with the right language, and it'll be back on the agenda for your approval.
Thank you.
Put that on as a date certain type thing, or is it?
And I will explain that I'm just a rule follower and a policy follower, and we don't have the policies in place right now, so that's just the way that I roll. It has nothing to do with the event center or anything like that, so.
Madam Chairman, could I complicate the Whiskey Ridge matter just one further thing?
Absolutely.
Since this wasn't, the consideration of the final resolution is considered to be a zoning matter and can be continued, but needs to be continued to a date certain. So a motion that would state as follows: I move that we table the consideration of a resolution for a special use permit for Whiskey Ridge to 9 a.m. April 5th, 2023.
That's my motion. Do I have a second?
Second, third,
Motion and a
fourth.
second. Begin voting with Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
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 Hi.
Abstain.
All right. Now we are at the Okay, thank you very much. And we are to presentations and discussion items.
I just got one.
Okay.
Just one item. Commissioner Smith and I attended the State of the City down in Baser yesterday and got to see some of the projects. Baser's definitely a city on the move, and it's kind of impressive to see some of the things they're doing. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I went to the State of the City address at Falcon Lakes yesterday for Baser's got it going on. I also attended Township Fire Department or Township Board meeting at the Fire Department last Thursday, City Council Baser last Wednesday. We're going to attend Keith Rickard's retirement tomorrow, Thursday, I believe, 4:30.
Yep.
I also attended the Leavenworth County Livestock Buyers Association event along with Representative Lance Neely at the farms at Wood End Springs. That's a venue just inside of Wyandotte County. Over 300 people, I believe, attended that, and they haven't got the total of the money raised, but it was huge.
Cool.
It was huge that these organizations go out and actually raise their money instead of coming to the county commission and asking for money. It can be done. Fundraisers can be successful. So that's all I have.
Very true. Commissioner Stephen?
Attended the Fire District 2 continuing negotiation meeting at the fire station in Linwood, and they will have their work product over to us soon, and they're making good progress. So I was able to see that. Also yesterday with Commissioner Cause, I attended the Jet Produce and Meats, and that is located at 26617 Tonganoxie Road, and it is I'll just read a little definition of it. Jacob Thomas, founder and owner of Jet Produce and Meats, grew up on his parents' farm outside Leavenworth in northeast Kansas. Jacob graduated from Iowa State University in 2013 with a degree in horticulture and animal science. Jet Produce and Meats was founded in 2012 as a family-owned and operated farm selling fresh fruits and vegetables, cage-free eggs, and high-quality USDA-inspected Angus beef, pork, lamb, and chicken. In 2018, he opened a farm stand in the front yard to make the food more available to the community. From the beginning, they've been environmentally friendly and sustainable in their practices, and they ensure only the freshest and best-tasting products for our customers. And we got to tour the farm, and it's a really nice...
And the purpose was a resolution.
For the
governor signed a resolution for Ag Month, for Agricultural Month being for the month of April. So I just wanted to also add that, and that location was selected by the governor's office, and I think that's a tribute to Jacob and to our community. So I just want to say
that Leavenworth County supports agriculture.
Yes, that we support agriculture, and they did recognize that we did there, that we had done a resolution, and we're appreciative of that as well. So,
and it was just a really nice event.
It was,
and I got some
money and jelly and some jelly.
I was hoping when the governor came to town, there's going to be a big announcement. There's going to be an influx of money coming to Leavenworth County.
I did get to briefly speak to the governor and thank her once again for the tornado relief that she signed into law that has benefited so many Leavenworth folks.
But we did. It was a nice event, and I did my shopping instead of having to go back. Let's see. And last evening I did the city commission meeting, and they had a display of the new receptacles that are going to be used for the city of Leavenworth for, it's an option for the residents of the city for their refuse, which they were very large. And let's see, I participated in the Kansas City Area Transit Authority meeting last Wednesday afternoon, and with the rest of you, we went to the retirement party for Keith Rickard, who has served our community for almost 30 years, and I think that he's going to be very missed, but Adam is going to be a really good replacement and will move the organization forward. So with that, if we don't have anything...
if you'll allow me, and I can wait for Commissioner
Go ahead.
Keenan, obviously.
Mine's just like a half second.
Go ahead.
This open house at Jet Produce on April 15th, open house and customer appreciation. So if you have an opportunity, the address is 26617 Tonganoxie Road. Go out and check it out.
Marshall.
South Eisenhower.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, that's great. Jeff?
Taxes. So I continue to work on trying to figure out ways to lower taxes. I'm on Senator Tyson's task force to work on that. There's 3 bills in Topeka that were presented. I've been back and forth the last couple of weeks that would cut your property taxes in half, and I bet most people don't even know about them. Senate Bill 1604, Senate Bill 196, and Senate Bill 79. If those were all to pass, your property taxes would be half of what they are right now.
What are the chances of them passing?
Not very good.
I didn't think so.
But I've been there yelling and on my soapbox because that's where the real problem needs to be fixed, and most people don't understand that. The last thing I want to say was at 1 o'clock I'm supposed to go out to give my speech I gave at the chamber to Ken Miller and put it on, broadcast it on their social media. So and that explains a lot of these Senate bills.
So are you following any of the other bills that are going to exempt certain classes not paying taxes to?
The tax shift bills?
The tax shift bills.
That will shift the weight on, more weight on the 30,000
and they will
parcel
probably
owners.
pass.
Yeah, and those are probably going to pass.
Yep.
So when they pass those exemptions for certain groups, that just means the other people that still have to pay taxes have to pay more. I don't understand their way of thinking.
Shocked with our recent bid, and I know we haven't gone through that bid yet, but it's unbelievable what a bridge costs.
Yeah.
From the time that it was decided this bridge was going to be replaced, how much increase it is. The county's portion, double, basically, right?
Yes.
And you just heard from Bill, they're going the opposite direction. Instead of
so
helping
now
us
they're going
more,
to be funding less,
they're taking away another 12%.
plus what we used to pay has doubled.
So another state unfunded mandate.
And we have it.
So we will see roads closed because of bridge failures.
Yep.
So there's no way we can keep up with this.
And Mark, you had something you wanted to add?
Well, Commissioners, mine will tie right into that. And I know I get up on this soapbox on a regular basis, but I think it's important, since the state fails to take into consideration what their actions mean locally, that we at least try to inform our local citizens when we can. And last week I mentioned that they were trying to exempt sales tax, our share of the sales tax on food. And it's not that we don't support tax relief, but we look for a way to offset that when we lose that income. And my understanding is that portion of the bill failed in the Senate yesterday. But I just want to take some of the response from Ty Masterson, who I believe chaired that committee, but actually Commissioner Cos shared this with me. They somehow don't understand that when they take money from us, we're skeptical that they will ever replace it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Despite the fact that when they provided us with the LAVTR, they stopped it. And they stopped at mid-year, for those who were around, and I was.
I remember.
They stopped at mid-year for us, which is the beginning of the year for them. Yep. So no notice, they just took it away. Didn't have a replacement for it, and their answer to that now is, the truth is, when they removed it, they were short. Their budget was failing. They didn't have enough money to cover it. So to balance their budget, they removed what they were contributing in the LAVTR. It had nothing to do with the local government was increasing taxes and they didn't like it.
That's right.
Nothing to do with that. They needed the money. They took it from the counties, and then they told us, go balance your budget without it, which we had to do. Not them. They didn't balance their budget for shortness of funds. They just kept our funds. That's the truth. You can go back and look at it. I was the finance director in Hayes at the time. I had to deal with it. The second thing they did, the business machinery exemption.
Yeah.
That was a last-minute thing. Nobody even knew it was coming. They submitted it on the last minute of the last day and approved it. And then their promise was that over a 5-year period, they would replace our revenue. They would ease us into it so we didn't have to take the hit all in 1 year. They made half of a payment. I think last week I said they didn't make any payments. They made half of a payment and no more. And again, why did they do that? Because they needed the money at the state level, and they said, counties, cities, Go balance your budget on your own back. We're not going to give you the money that we promised. So then they come up with this new plan, the new deal, and that is to eliminate sales tax, our sales tax that we collect locally for our roads, and that the cities collect for operations for their roads, for their police, for everything. And they said, here, we promise you, we'll replace that revenue for you. We're going to set $270 million aside. Thank goodness there were some people on the Senate who listened to local government and who remembered what happened back then, and they said, you're only budgeting for 1 year and you're promising it for 1 year, but you're taking it away forever. So they voted no on it. Now I want to read the quote for how Mr. Masterson responded to that.
Please do.
From my perspective, if it passed, it would have eased the path to truly eliminate sales tax on food for our constituents and while protecting local governments from a loss of revenue. I don't know how he was saying they were going to protect us from a loss of revenue, other than, once again, we have to rely on our big brother at the state to give us money that we know if they ever need it, they're not giving it to us. Since it failed, we never have to listen to those same local governments whining about unfunded mandates ever again, as now their credibility has been destroyed. Despite time and again, they destroy their credibility by not following through with promises to us. The LAVTR was a contractual agreement that they failed to meet every year since they stopped giving it to us. The commercial business exemptions, they failed that from the get-go every time. And now they thought we should trust them on this one. It's just unbelievable that they think we trust them to be responsible with our funds when we know when they need the money, they're going to keep it.
Now, if you look through it, was there? Yeah, me too.
And
There's a lot of
again,
audacity
the
there.
answer that they give that we raise taxes, local municipalities raise taxes, so we couldn't be trusted with the LAVTR funds. That's false. That's
true.
not why they held it. They held it because they needed to balance their budget.
Right.
You can go back and read when they did that. And I would also like to point out that despite keeping all of our money, despite that, their budget has increased at a rate faster than our budget has, but they continue to criticize us about the speed at which the local budgets have increased. I know it's a soapbox. I know I get on it often, but when I read,
It's all facts.
when I read
No, I was
things like
upset. That's why I
this,
sent it to you.
where he tries to push the blame back on the counties
Yeah, right.
for his bill not passing, that would have cost millions of dollars to our county, our local government. When they try to put that back on us, it just frustrates me to no end. And they either don't know the truth and the history, or they choose to insert their own.
Or they think we
They don't
forgot.
care.
And some of the other language in there, I would encourage people to go read about
Yeah.
why they wanted to do this, because really how it reads to me is a redistribution of wealth. They were going to take money from the larger, richer counties and distribute it out to some of the smaller counties. So be informed on what's happening in Topeka. It has a much larger impact on what happens locally than you really think.
It's a good read guarantee.
Thank
It
you,
is.
Mark. I appreciate that very
The
much.
first year the demand transfers didn't come in, our budget was already set.
Same here.
And then July 1, it came in, we're not transferring this
I know.
money.
Yep.
And I think
It's-
the road department kind of shut down in September that year.
It's 6 months to make up the shortfall for that year, and then adjust your budget going
For next
forward.
And yeah, and I lived through that, Mark. You're absolutely right.
Yep.
And then try to remain revenue neutral.
And I
like-
lost
like
my
they
job
are.
because of it.
Yeah.
Well, and we had a comment from one of our local representatives about the LAVTR, and he said, well, Leavenworth County would get, I believe the number was
Right.
12 million, but Sedgwick County is going to get 41 million, and Johnson County is going to get this much. But that's all based on your population. And, you know, it's not like it's being unfair to Leavenworth County or to any. I mean,
Or to
everybody.
no,
You know,
It's money they already have. It's the money they kept.
It's our-
It's like,
it's
oh,
our
it's ours.
money.
Let me
It's
give
our
you
money.
that.
They say they got such
It's
a
our money.
surplus.
It's our
Right.
money.
So,
Get me
but
fired up
anyway,
again.
no, I think the representative Todd has never said we'll ever get it back. Now, other representatives have said, oh yeah, we want to work on that, I want to introduce, but he said, he's always been up front, said there's no way you'll ever see that money back.
But they don't have to
Yeah.
remain revenue neutral at the state level either.
but you're
Oh,
not going to
state
get it
level.
back if they don't fight for it in Topeka and work on it. you're certainly not going to get it back.
And nobody's going to ever introduce a bill to change the law that's supposed to reduce property taxes. So they just ignore it.
And that's what I've noticed 4 years now doing this is the county and local officials, the city and county, basically, it's almost like you're talking to a wall when you're talking to the state folks. They don't seem to have any connection to what is happening back in Leavenworth. And it's like, do you understand the need here? You know?
Want to do a Reagan quote here? Tear that wall down.
But we need help from, we need our representatives to help us.
Right. And so with that, we're going to light up our building blue on Friday in honor of Child Abuse Prevention Month. And
By the end of the year, it'll be lit up in red because we're going to be in the red.
we could do that. We could just
Be on fire.
We could just have it blackout.
There'll be no lights.
Yeah. But I just wanted
Maybe July 1.
to point out to drive by the courthouse and just remember that, support our children and our families, and if you see a CASA, thank a CASA. I'm on the board of directors of CASA, and we also have the Night at the Races coming up. So if you have the desire to participate in that, the tickets will go on sale, and it's a very enjoyable event. So
It's
and
a
it's a fundraiser.
I'm
They
telling you,
raise
these
and they raise
fundraisers
funds to support their own organization. So there we go. And with that, I'll
Make a
People
motion.
can
Make a
give as
motion
much
to
money as
adjourn?
they want to these fundraisers.
That's right.
Yep. Have a motion to adjourn. So moved. A second?
Second.
And beginning.
Aye.
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 We're adjourned. Thank you.
Madam Chair.